Welcome everyone. I'm really excited to see all of us this morning. It's my greatest pleasure to have this opportunity to communicate, to connect, to reconnect with all of us. And I believe today we will use this platform to enhance our heart-to-heart connection and also enhance our communication because it is through our communication that we are able to break down so many walls that have been put up by states and structures and academic and religion institution and all kind of structured and unstructured systems in the world. So I'm really humbled and excited that you are able to join me this morning so that we can have this intimate conversation on how people can connect better with each other, people can understand better with each other, so that at the end of the day, really, we are able to live as one and we are able to be who we are as human beings. Because that is really essential, because when you look around us, there are systems that are working very hard to keep us divided, and better communications with ourselves and better communication with the people we love, with the people we work with the people we come across every day means better performance. It also make the world a little more cozier place to be at. So I'm going to share my screen, and I have a couple of steps that will help us do that throughout this exercise. The content of my sharing is based on neuro-linguistic programming, a little bit of my experience and knowledge from master scan coaching, and also my personal experience. So I'm just hoping that we will be able to connect, and by the end of this workshop, it is my belief and trust that we will be able to have enhanced our ability not only to connect with ourselves, because that's the underlying factor, but also our ability to connect with each other. So without much further ado, let me share the screen. I love this quote by Rumi. He says that yesterday I was clever, I wanted to change the world. Today I'm wiser, I am going to change myself. And I strongly believe that is partly one of the reasons why we are having this online conversation together, because we realize that we do have an opportunity, we do have a room for growth, and we want to be a little bit wiser so that we can work, develop on ourselves. I'm hoping that you have a piece of paper with you, or a notebook at least, because we have a couple of exercises. And one of the exercises involves you just having a blank sheet of paper with you, or any kind of paper that you can do something with. So the first step that I would love to share on heart-to-heart conversation or communication or connection, if you may, for us to have a less stressful summer, but also for us to have a less stressful relationship, for us to have less stressful working places, for us to have less stressful tension in our relationship, is our step number one. And the step number one is that the map is not your territory. And what I mean by this is that the map of the other person that you're communicating to is entirely not your territory. It is their world and it is their territory. Before I go further into the step number one, I have a humble request for all of us. Please take a moment, just take a moment to put your fingers, just the way I've put mine, if you can. So your thumb finger is connected to other fingers, so you press them a little bit down together. And then if you can, if you're not driving or if you don't have a phone on your hands, you can put them on your laps, let them rest on your lap, and just take one deep breath with me. My friends and I like calling it a village breath. We would love to ground ourselves so that we are physically here, we are mentally here, but also that we are able to bless each participant on this workshop with our presence. Because when we are able to connect to one energetic field, distance does not matter. We are really able to connect with each other because we are all one. So on my count of 3, I'm going to request you just to take a deep breath. Keep your fingers pressed to the thumb finger. And when you take a deep breath, just seek for the connection within. And connection with yourself is also going to lead with connection to other people. So on my count of 3, please let's take a village breath, and 1, 2, and 3, breathe in and out. So breathe in again and breathe out through your mouth for the one more time. Please help me in taking a village breath. Breathe in and out. Now, I would like for you to think of the last time you had a conflict because of your communication. So remember the person you had necessarily not an altercation, but you couldn't just communicate to. You were not in the same mind space. You are not reading from the same page. So I would love for you to have that person or that event or that occurrence at the back of your mind. So my strong conviction is that we've all had such experiences, whether recent, in the recent past, or a couple of weeks or months back. So please have that person or event or occurrence throughout these 6 steps that you're going to go through. So the step number 1, the map is not your territory. The exercise that you're going to do is that I'm going to ask you on your notebook or on your blank sheet of paper, kindly draw an iceberg and make sure that your iceberg is on a deep ocean, and write your name at the top, at the tip of the iceberg. So below the iceberg, write everything that you think you're made of, what has influenced you to be who you are. So kindly write as many things as possible. You know, this could be depending on your environment. I don't want to preempt what you're thinking. So what are you made of as a person? What experiences has led to where you are until now? So in a couple of seconds, we are going to stop so that we can continue. All right, so we have an iceberg, and at the top of the tip of the iceberg is your name, and below the iceberg is everything that, ideally, not everything, but some of the things that represent you. And these are different things. I'd just like for people to feel free and share, if that's okay with you, some of the things that are coming up for you below the iceberg. So you realize that everyone has many layers of different experiences. Some of these experiences we share in common, some of them are different. The thing is, that is what is visible to the eye. There is so much more that is actually not visible to the eye. For example, what you have inherited from your parents, what I might call your subconscious default behavior, that is also your imprint, if you like. And when we combine the things that we are made of and the message that we are trying to communicate, the other person has their own iceberg. And sometimes it becomes very difficult because they filter what you're saying with the perception of their world. So they receive the message with the feel that is, and they filter it using their experiences and using everything that they're made of. So you can imagine communicating then becomes such a delicate issue because everyone you're communicating to have their own model of an iceberg. And the message that you're communicating across is actually filtered and perceived through the specific model of the iceberg. So remember, I say that throughout this exercise, please have an event or an occurrence or a conflict, communication conflict that you had with someone. And so try to connect your iceberg with the other person's iceberg. What this brings about is compassion and empathy, because you realize that they are also coming from somewhere. There's a popular word in South Africa, in Xhosa language, I believe, and the word is uvelapi. Uvelapi means, where are you coming from? So everyone is coming from their own layers of experiences, deep layers of unconscious behavior, deep layers of inherited behavior, and deep layers of imprint that make us have bias, judgment, or bias reaction while communicating. And so that is what we mean, that the map is not your territory. The map is the model of the other person that you're communicating to. So moving on to the second part of this process for the heart-to-heart connection is that the meaning of your communication is the response you get. So many a time we make a very beautiful assumption, and this assumption is that I am communicating, and so everyone hears what I am saying. But the reality is that the response that you get from your communication is the actual message that is landing home. And remember, the objective is to have an open dialogue that is non-judgmental, and a dialogue that is able to enhance connection instead of creating a wall between the people you're talking to or the person you're communicating to. And so in this second step, that the meaning of your communication is the response you get. We're also going to do an exercise that involves you having one piece of paper. I have a blank sheet of paper with me. So if you can also get a piece of paper, that would be very nice. Please grab yourself a piece of paper. I'm going to stop sharing the screen so that I can see what everyone is doing. Kindly, well, Dorothy, you might need one piece of paper, just a piece of paper, because we are going to do an exercise with it. So please close your eyes and just follow my instructions. So close your eyes. Fold your piece of paper into two parts. Fold your piece of paper into two parts. Now, tear a piece of paper, in a small part. Cut a small part in the folded piece of paper, or tear a small part. While you still have your eyes closed, having folded your big piece of paper into two, and having torn a little part from the fold your piece of paper again into two. And cut a small part. Tear out a small part or cut out a small part. While still having your eyes closed, having folded your piece of paper again into two, having torn your a small part of the piece of paper, please fold your piece of paper again into two. Fold your piece of paper again into two. And again, cut a small piece of paper. You realize now that it is becoming difficult to tear out or cut out a small, tiny little part of the piece of paper. And for the last time, fold the same piece of paper again into two. And now this one is going to require you to use a little bit of your muscles. Ladies, mindful of your nails. So again, cut, if you can, a tiny little piece of paper from the folded piece of paper. And open your eyes if you may now. Open your eyes, unfold the piece of paper. Unfold the piece of paper and let's reveal the pattern of the piece of paper. I'm curious. Sharon, show me your piece of paper. Okay, so the patterns are pretty much different and similar. Different. I see yours, Dorothy. I hope everybody else that is not on video has their part of piece of paper. Fantastic. You see, look at the differences. It's beautiful. Same piece of paper, same set of instructions, 16 or 14 different results. So thank you very much. I'll share my screen again. Friends, that is the meaning of your communication, is in the response that I just got from you. The response that I got from all of you is very beautiful. I believe in diversity because there's a lot of beauty in diversity. The first assumption, and if I may use the word wrong, the wrong assumption that I can only make when I'm communicating to you is to assume that you all understand what I mean. And that goes back again to our step number one, because I realize that each and every one of us has layers underneath the tip of their iceberg that filters their perception and how you see the world, which is a very beautiful thing. However, these are little small things that actually, then the meaning of the communication is in the response that you get all the time. And so the response that you get all the time is really critical in establishing whether the message has landed home. And it is something that you have to remind yourself every time. Now, going back to the case at the back of the mind, are you able, and I'm asking this as a rhetoric question, you don't have to answer, are you able to relate why you had conflict in communication with the person that you did with, or at the occurrence or the event? So please keep going back to the same case that we established at the beginning. And for those of us who are not there at the beginning, I requested everyone to have a case in mind of the last conflict in communication that you had. Because whenever conflict happens, there's a wall that we build between us and the people we have the conflict with. And this wall is a wall made of ego. And we are hoping by the following couple of steps, we will be able to dismantle down that wall and have better heart-to-heart connection. Which leads us to our step number 3. And the step number 3 is that the words are not the experience they represent. Behavior is the most important information about someone. You're going to realize very quickly that there's so much beauty and there's so much culture in the world. And the words that we use to communicate with actually have meaning for us, and they may carry totally different meaning to the other person that we are communicating with. And so this is where the emotional intelligence comes into play. Emotional intelligence in terms of self-awareness, emotional intelligence in terms of self-management, emotional intelligence in terms of social awareness, and lastly, relationship management. So I'm reading a book, Conversations with God by Donald Neil Walsh. And one of the points, or one of the pointers in part of the book is that words were actually created to hide our emotions. And it's very typical of men. And I'm making a general, which is most probably a false generalization. Men most of the time choose to use or stick on words rather than also give room to what they feel. And so connecting with people, just checking in with them, what I am saying, how does it make you feel? Now that is important. In corporate organization, that is something that has totally been disregarded. You know, most of the time communication is taken as a one-way highway. However, communication is also an exchange of energy and exchange of emotions. So merely the words we use are just a cover-up most of the time of the deep-sitting feelings that we also want to express, but sometimes we do not have a safe space, or sometimes we do not have the courage, or we don't feel bold enough to use or to engage these feelings because we fear or we are judgmental, or we are critical of ourselves, we think that we will be judged. Well, the reality of the matter is most of the time, the other person that you're talking to might not even judge you. And one question which I believe is very important, and you might need to always ask yourself, is that the thoughts that are coming in my mind, is it really true that if I express what I'm feeling, I'm going to be judged? And then the question number two is, do I know for sure if it is true that I'm going to be judged if I express what I am feeling? And the third question that you might also want to ask yourself is, what would I be if I wouldn't think I'm going to be judged? What would I be if I expressed my feelings? What kind of connection would I make if I fully and truly brought my authentic self, put my authentic self on the table to express how I am feeling and what I'm thinking? And when you go back in history, when you're looking at great transformative leaders, leaders such as all of you, because all of us are leaders in our different capacities and perspectives. The most impactful conversation that you've had are the conversation that you've had coming from your heart. Conversation that the meaning was deeply drawn from your heart. And people might not remember who you are. People might not remember what you did for them. But I can assure you that people will always and ever remember how you made them feel. So the words are not the experience they represent. Behavior of the other person is the important information about the other person. So that brings to the conclusion of step number 3. I will transition into step number 4. And I know at this moment, probably some questions are coming up. And so if you have any question, kindly feel free to type them out in the group chat. And I'm sure Maria is going to take note of them, and I will also see them, and we will be able to try as much as possible with all the collective knowledge of all the people here, answer to those questions. So our step number 4 is that the behavior has a positive, every behavior has a positive intention. Find the intention, change the behavior. Now, this one is hard to swallow because it seems like a justification of the most nasty behavior or the most cruel behavior that people take. But really, when you come to think about it, actually, every behavior do have a positive intention for the perpetrator. Might not be the same for the victim. When I'm angry and I'm shouting out loud, it has a positive intention for me because I want to express what I'm feeling. I have probably lost control of my emotional awareness, or if you like, my emotional intelligence. But then it does have a positive intention on me. Let's say I am driving abnormally fast and, bypassing traffic. To other people, that might be seen nasty and uncaring, and I'll be seen as a total moron. But that behavior has a positive intention for me. Remember the case that I mentioned at the beginning. Remember the person you had conflict with. You had conflict with them most probably because they stood or stick to a point of view that had benefit not for you, for them. And this calls us to mind of the many times that we draw lines on the ground. This also calls us to mind and remind us just how humane and human everyone is. This calls us to mind and remember that actually everyone is on a journey and everyone is growing. No one can claim with certainty that they have it all together. And so, since every behavior has a positive intention, and I want to have a heart-to-heart connection with someone who I'm having a conflict with, what this does is that it draws me to step number one, which is the model of their world. It gives me compassion. It helps me understand them, that whatever they are doing it because it has a positive intention for them. Take a minute to think about it, because this might be conflicting with everything that you know. Think about the last conflict that you had. And when you think about it, the other person, as much as you are right, and not, if we might not fall in the trap of duality of right and wrong, but just think about the other person. Why did they do what they did? Or why did they act the way they did? Why did they say what they said? And part of the reason why they said what they said, or why they did what they did, is because whatever they did or whatever they said had positive intention for them, not for you, for them. So in essence, what this does, or what this reminds us, is drop down the judgment, because you actually do not really know what is going on or what the model of the other person is. The moment I drop down my judgment in any conflictual situation, I'm able to see the other person minus the conflict. I love the words of Maya Angelou, and she says that she quotes a Greek phrase that I'm going to rephrase myself, that I'm human and nothing human can be alien to me. So when you remind yourself that I'm so human and nothing human can be alien to me, then in one way or the other, you are able to bring yourself to this difficult situation of realizing that every behavior actually has a positive intention. You don't have to agree with that statement. Think about it. Also think about your case in mind of the last conflicting communication you had. When you put this statement in perspective, does it bring any change? Would you have acted any different? So those are some of the insight and some of the questions that you have to keep asking yourself. So every time I'm going to refer back to the first case that you had in mind, so that you can realize how quickly we miss an opportunity to connect. The window for missing an opportunity to have a heart-to-heart connection is very slim. So most of the time you will actually bypass it unconsciously, because in your subconscious mind, by default programming of everything you think you know, of the environment around you, of your education and circumstances, everything that you think you know in your subconscious mind actually does not give you an opportunity to take that window, that slim window of dropping down the judgment. So keep having the first case in your mind so that you can see what fits where, and so that you can also bring yourself every time to consciousness so that you do not miss an opportunity to have a heart-to-heart connection in your communication. Number 5 is step number 5, leading to our step, which is the second last step. Our step number 5 is that people have all the resources to achieve their goals. This one is also needs a little bit to settle in, because it's just a reminder for us to claim back our power. Every time we are having conflict, some stories in the Eastern world goes that, and every time you're having conflict, your souls leave your body. I don't know how true that is, but I would love to believe that is true. Then you're not able to connect with the other person because your soul has left your body. I mean, in a very metaphoric way, just to say. So people have all the resources they need to achieve a heart-to-heart connection. And this is a reminder for us of our potential and our capability that unfortunately we do not tap into many a times. Many a times we think of great people. Many a times we look up to great people. And the risk of doing this is that we forget of our own greatness. We forget our own little, gentle, soft voices that are quickly deafened by our chaotic mind. Because our chaotic mind is full of stories, is full of self-criticism. Our chaotic mind is full of judgment and ego, and it quickly deafens our own greatness. And therefore, we quickly forget just how powerful we are as a people. And because we forget how powerful we are as a people, quickly, very quickly, we also want to take other people down with us in that slippery slope. And so this is just a reminder for all of us, every time you want to have a heart-to-heart conversation, every time you're having a difficult time in having a heart conversation, remember the other person have all the resources they need to be great and to connect with you. In every story, you do not have to be the hero to help the other person or the victim from the other person. In every story, you just need to be and consciously be you. So this is a reminder that, because most of the time we find that, oh, I think I have to say it for you because you can't say it better, or I have to speak on your behalf. Or sometimes parents, not all the time, but most of the time, even when it is not necessary, parents really speak for their children. And they forget that they are actually disenfranchising or disempowering their children, because their children have the capability to speak for themselves. And when we are reminded that we've got to stand up and speak for ourselves, the reminder or the clarion call is just to remind us that we've got to tap what is within us, so that what without us, anything that is outside of us, cannot affect us. And so before we give consent to all the forces, to all the energy, to the other person, to affect what is within us, we really need to remind ourselves, and humbly so, that we have all the resources we need in ourselves to have a heart-to-heart connection. we are all the Martin Luther Kings, and we are all the Mahatma Gandhis, and we are all the Diana and Mother Teresa, because we have what it takes to be that great. Which lead me to the last point in my presentation today, and that is that there is no failure, only feedback. We need to redefine that statement called failure, because it does so much damage than good. And when you think that there's no failure, only feedback, I love the words of MasterPeace CEO Adbos, because he keeps reminding me all the time that we have more than 7 billion talents and solutions and not problem. So when you think about this statement, that there's no failure, it's only feedback, remember the case that you have at the back of your mind. The last time you had a conflict with someone, they might have made you feel like you failed. But that is what you have been taught. If you do not meet expectations of someone else, or when you're not able to be in the same page as your colleague or your family or your loved one, you think you failed. The world tells you you failed. But the reality is you haven't failed. It is feedback that you've received. It is an opportunity for you to connect better. So literally speaking, a conflict is an opportunity for better relationship, for better communication, for better and deeper engagement, for better understanding. So conflict is not all bad or negative in itself, and I'm cognizant of the fact that some conflict is very damaging. I'm conscious of that fact. However, notwithstanding, when you think that there is no failure, it is only feedback, then it asks you to be courageous enough to try again. So I'm trying to have a heart-and-heart connection, for example, with my neighbor, or for example, with my colleague, and it doesn't happen, and I think I've failed. The truth of the matter is, I just have another opportunity to try, because it's not the number of times that you fall down that matters, it is the number of times that you raise up that matters. So like a phoenix rising from the ashes, you know? So just remember this statement if you forget everything else in the 6 steps, that there is no failure, there is only feedback when it comes to heart communication and conversation. And now what I'm going to request all of us, I'm going to stop sharing my screen because we've come to the end of the presentation. What I'm going to request all of us is just to deeply think about those 6 steps that we've gone through, bearing in mind the case or the last time that you had conflict. Remember those 6 steps. And the question that I have for all of us is, now that you know better, will you do better moving forward? And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you all so much for joining. I wish you all a very stress-free summer and better heart-to-heart communication moving forward. Thank you so much.